resources for, sorry, it's okay. This is being recorded. Executive Director at Accessible Resources for Independence. We are the Center for Independent Living serving Anne Arundel and Howard counties in Maryland. I am going to try to do a description of myself. I'm really bad at these, but I'm working on getting better. I am a white female who will be turning 38 tomorrow with blonde hair that's pulled back and pink earphones and a black t-shirt dress with a sign that says gather behind me, which is not recommended in these times. I am excited today to bring to you a whole discussion around parenting with a disability. If you have questions, oh, thank you. If you have questions, if you could put them in the chat, if the chat's not accessible to you, you can just pipe up and let me know, but I think we'll wait for questions until the end. We have Dr. Kara Ayers, who's going to be doing a presentation on the Disabled Parenting Project. We'll stop and do questions after she's finished. And then we're going to do a short panel with some Maryland parents with disabilities. So, okay, without further ado, Dr. Ayers, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you. Everybody's welcome to call me Kara, and I'm going to share my slides here. I don't think that my slides will take near the whole 30 minutes, so I'm hoping that we can have plenty of time for discussion, so think about those along the way. Oh, it's clearly Monday because I've lost the window. Hold on just a second. All right, try one more time here. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. It's not in presentation mode though, is it?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to fix that so that it can be a little bit bigger for people. All right, now we should be ready to go. Okay, so thank you for your patience. My kind of day job is I am the associate director of our University of Cincinnati, you said, but I am always excited to have the chance to work with CILS. I sit on our local CILS in Cincinnati, Center for Independent Living Opportunities. I sit on their board, and I also sit on our state Independent Living Council. So I am definitely a CIL ally and just welcome the opportunity to work with you all. I think in large part because I see a lot of the impact that you make on the ground. And so that just motivates me to have partnerships whenever possible. So I'm hoping that we can discuss some different routes to parenthood, both routes that I've explored personally. I guess I've done more than explored, I've pursued personally. And also, I am also a researcher in studying parenting with a disability as well. So sometimes we'll reflect from different perspectives with that. I hope that today we'll talk about formal and informal supports for parenting, and I'm looking forward to hearing the panel and their stories as well, because I'm sure that woven in there are different supports that people have used, because whether you're a parent with a disability or not, it very much literally takes a village, and so we tend to overlook some of the informal supports that can really be the most valuable for any of our families. We'll talk a bit about rights as a disabled parent and how many of you may know that they unfortunately are not as assured or as fair or just as they should be, and that they vary greatly state by state. And hopefully you also know that CILS have really been leaders in advocating for many states to improve their laws around supports and protections of parents with disabilities. So, and we continue to see progress in that area as well. And then last, kind of brainstorming together, what resources to support parents with disabilities do we know of, and what do we really hope to see more of as well. So I have no conflicts of interest in today's talk, and this is my background. So this is our family here. My husband and I both have osteogenesis imperfecta, and we're both full-time wheelchair users and have to consider kind of the changing nature of our disability in terms of our bones break easily, and more common, thankfully for us, than a like full-on fracture are cracks or aches or pain, kind of like chronic pain associated with the number of fractures that we've had, and also just we tend to luckily break in smaller scale now than like the big kind of drastic fractures that can really put us out of commission. So knocking on all kinds of wood, but that's mostly what we deal with on the day to day. We have experienced both pregnancy with my two daughters separately. One is 4, our youngest, and one is 11. Our 4-year-old just a couple hours ago left for preschool today. So she has been chomping at the bit for that since not only 7 a.m. this morning, but for weeks, as she told me. So it's an exciting day in our house. And then my son Eli, we brought home in 2014 from China. And that process really taught us a lot as two parents with disabilities, navigating all of the different steps for an international adoption, and in doing so really trying to explain how our family functions, and why we were the best parents for Eli, given his circumstances. Of course, his birth parents would have been our ideal, but when we met him and found him online, he had already been without them for a number of years. So I professionally, I've mentioned my role at the USAID, but I'm also co-founder of the Disabled Parenting Project. And we fit under the National Research Center for Parents with Disabilities, which I would definitely recommend as a resource for you, whether it be looking up laws in your states, or there's just a wealth of different webinars and trainings and policy briefs, blogs, that it's really a great central hub for all things parenting with a disability. So one of the things we maybe don't talk enough about when we think about parenting with a disability is prospective parents. And I know for a number of years before I became a parent, I thought about, would I become a parent? How would I become a parent? And that process can feel very lonely for people with disabilities, because we often don't receive very positive or enthusiastic responses from even those that have supported us in other aspects of our life with a disability. So it can feel like you don't really have anybody to ask these questions to, or anybody to talk about it. Medical providers can be very discouraging or hesitant based on their own lack of knowledge around parents with a disability. So some of my work is focused on what kind of information do people of any age really, with disabilities, what kind of information do they need to know to think about whether they want to be a parent or not? I don't think that parenting with, I don't think that parenting is for everybody. Some people, intentionally choose not to parent. I had a funny experience once. My admin at my USAID received a call from somebody who said, I want to talk to that woman that wants everybody in a wheelchair to be a parent. And so luckily my admin knew that that was me, but that's actually not my goal. I want people that want to be parents to look into having a family just like anybody else, but I don't believe that everybody has to be a parent. So there is a difference there. But the decision making is tough. And so identifying your systems of support, remembering if they come in lots of different forms, doing your research. It's very frustrating that preconception visits, which would be so important for especially women with disabilities to consider what pregnancy might be like for their bodies, what disability related concerns they should consider. Medicaid in many states doesn't cover preconception appointments. So I've actually supported someone to make that appointment, and we called the doctor that we knew took her Medicaid, and the doctor put us on hold and then came back and said, we'd be happy to see her once she was pregnant. But that's kind of defeats the purpose of a preconception visit. So that's a policy piece that we need to work on too, to get people to be able to have more information before they make these decisions too. And then also joining forums. We accept, so the Disabled Parenting Project has a very active group online. We are one of those on Facebook. We are one of those groups that requires, I think we have 3 questions. And in this group, we welcome prospective parents. So you can say, I'm thinking about being a parent. You don't have to already be a parent to join our group. And we made that decision so that people could connect with others and get their questions answered. I also have a couple of fact sheets, one for providers to talk to people with disabilities about potentially becoming parents, and another for women with developmental disabilities that I'm happy to share with Katie, and maybe you can share with the group via email. After this, I can send that along. So pregnancy with a disability, sometimes finding a provider could be very difficult. I've worked with women that have had to find providers hours from their home because they've been told, other providers closer to their home aren't comfortable taking them or seeing them with their needs. And so that really complicates birth, as you can imagine, too. So I'm thinking of a couple people that had to actually rent hotels close to their hospital in the weeks before their birth because you can't be hours from the hospital in that case. So finding a provider can be really challenging. Asking the question of, do you need a high risk provider? Some of the research around women with a disability has found that we are disproportionately or kind of overly cautiously assigned to high risk providers. And while some people think, well, there's not too much wrong with that, you just have kind of closer guidance and eyes on you. The other side of that is it can be more of a medicalized pregnancy than some women want or need. And so with my second pregnancy, I kind of looked deeper into this question. And for me, the answer ended up being yes, I did. Me and the baby needed a high risk pregnancy team to follow me, which I was more than happy with because I liked my team for my first pregnancy, but it was a 30-minute commute into 30 without traffic into, downtown of my city rather than being able to stick with an OB in my suburb. But when I checked into it, I felt like I had really good reasons that they pointed out of why high risk was right for me. But some women, with really uncomplicated pregnancies and just their disability is not expected to have that much of a influence in the birth. It's questionable whether they need a high risk provider. Also, the role of genetic counseling is one that I've studied, looking at attitudes around genetic counseling. There, there is a lot of misunderstanding about what genetic counseling is. It should give you kind of more information if you want it in a neutral way. But some people with disabilities are rightfully concerned, given the history of genetic counseling, that they feel like they might be pressured to take certain tests or to act, to terminate a pregnancy if they received a certain result. Again, that's not the standard of the profession, but I think we do need to be honest in validating people's experience that, many of us with disabilities have had some pretty unexpected and unstandardized interactions with medical professionals. So that's something to look at as well. And untangling what's disability related and what's pregnancy related can be really difficult, especially for women with disabilities, whether it be their first pregnancy or later in the stages when I think it becomes confusing for all. So those are all kind of things to consider. I'm going to move through this a little bit quicker, just the idea of making a birth plan as a woman with a disability, or really as a person too, because we've also heard from fathers with disabilities who felt very kind of boxed out of the birth experience because of just failure to consider really basic accessibility needs, being told their chair is too large to fit in certain spaces, when really that's unacceptable and not only a once in a lifetime experience, but also the need to support your partner at that time. So, fathers with disabilities can be built into a birth plan as well. Adoption, as I've mentioned, is a less common route, but and I'd argue is maybe even more challenging now than it was a few years ago, at least internationally. Of course, related to COVID, international adoptions have all but stopped. There's a slow increase again, but kind of very slow, and especially with China specifically, which when we researched was one of the only places open to considering parents with disabilities if you were open to adopting a child with a similar disability to yours. So all of our paperwork to China explained that we are two little people. That's how our disability is classified. It's one of hundreds of types of skeletal dysplasia or dwarfism. And we explained that, we are two little people and we want to adopt a son who is also a little person. And, we know all the doctors that can care for him and we have a community here for him. And, China granted our paperwork at every step of the way. So but it has not always, it's unpredictable. I have a friend who both parents are blind, and they adopted two children from China, and some really intricate rules changed with China a couple years ago, and they were denied a third child to return back to. So it is not something I kind of tell people to expect to be able to pursue. Definitely not easily, but I mean, for us, it's been an incredible way to grow our family, and most importantly, to have our son Eli. So, it is a path that's possible. And just noting too that domestic adoption, you may be aware, is more birth parent centered. So birth parents, who may have lots of questions about how a parent with a disability would parent, are typically less likely to place. They usually have more applications for newborns than they have several to look over. And many times they will not select parents with disabilities. So many parents with disabilities may wait even longer than typical newborn domestic wait times, which vary, but can be quite a bit of time. I mentioned a bit about planning for parenthood no matter what route you pursue, but I just really want to emphasize a strength-based approach in thinking about this, knowing how people with disabilities excel at problem solving, creativity, resilience, and just emphasizing that there's always more than one way to do anything. So whether it be carrying an infant, helping with homework, if that's not a strength of yours for various reasons, there are supports that can make that possible. Teaching a toddler to walk, discipline, um, all of these things have multiple ways to pursue them. And many of them are creative supports. There are some formal supports. Unfortunately, our systems don't really support parenting with many formal supports. It's not an allowed, service by many direct support providers. So parents have to get creative. And many times what they land on is more family-centered, culturally competent approaches. Our family has definitely benefited from early intervention. We qualified with my first daughter, because she was premature. Both of them were premature, but at that point, we qualified for early intervention services, which was a great way for them to come to our house and give us different ideas and problem solve things together. Preschool has been another good way for us to have kind of other people on our team to help with different things. And one of our challenges has been just traveling in the community with a toddler, helping her to learn to stay with us, and we really have to limit some of our more thinking about dangerous parking lots and things like that. We limit that during those toddler years where it's not safe. So sometimes people ask for like the magic, like, how do you do this? And sometimes the answer is we choose, we make choices, and we use click lists instead of Kroger, and we, those types of things. Care.com is another place that we found caregivers that have been a good match for our family, and that matters to us that they're comfortable with us as well as parents, as well as with our kids. I hope you've seen the Rocking the Cradle report. It's linked here. If not, and I can also send these to Katie after we talk today. Unfortunately, it's not as out of date as Robin Powell, and I wish we could say it was. There hasn't been enough changes that we wish we could say that, these state laws were vastly updated, but it's been slow progress. And then this is a map of the different state policies that from the National Research Center that I've linked as well. Just a couple final notes related to the ADA and how it applies to parenthood, thinking about school accommodations, remembering that a parent is a part of a child's education team. And so it is absolutely acceptable to ask the school to accommodate your needs for materials and different communication formats. I say that while also recognizing that many parents do their due diligence advocating for it. And, I read a heartbreaking story of kindergarten orientation of a deaf parent who she'd set up everything that she, needed, and went above and beyond what she should have had to do, and got to the orientation and there were not interpreters. So, this is an uphill battle, and I know I always appreciate when people join me in kind of helping me with this and the burden of advocacy constantly for it. My kids are never the burden. I'm not the burden. My disability is not even the burden, but just society's failure to recognize parents with disabilities and support us in really basic ways to allow us to lead our families can feel like a burden sometimes. And so helpful people, allies who are along with us are just priceless and for our family. Final words of wisdom, just the peer support community of other disabled parents has always been my greatest resource, troubleshooting things. And I've learned a ton, cross disability as well. I've learned so many things I think of from my blind friends who have taught me different things. There's a lot that you do as a parent where you can't have all, both eyes on it. And so it's not even disability specific to your disability type. It's just this collective effort, which I really love being a part of. Um, Also, the stigma that we face as parents, I encourage other parents with disabilities to have a healthy caution slash, I joke, paranoia, in that the truth is we cannot trust systems. I've seen parents with disabilities be treated unjustly too many times. So I do encourage people to be, have a healthy caution with that. That doesn't mean don't ask for supports, but just recognize that our people have been treated unfairly, and so be on guard for that, because we're protecting our most valuable people, and just leverage that creativity, humor, problem solving, and resilience that I know that we have to make, if it's your dream to become a parent, a reality. And if you already are one, it's an ongoing journey, as I'm sure every day. So that is my little spiel, and I'm happy to take a couple questions before I'm looking forward to this panel.
Hey, I didn't see any questions in the chat. Does anyone have questions they want to voice?
So this is Bong. I don't have a question, but I did want to just say, Kara, that was actually, in my opinion, a wonderful presentation and wonderful slides, because just everything that you just hit on, I'm sure, a lot of parents, disabled or not, think about. So I think that was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, this is
Kara.
Tiffany. I don't have a question, but I also wanted to, I'm sorry, my baby's crying, but I also wanted to piggyback on what Bong said. That was excellent, excellent. I recently just had a baby and I'm wheelchair bound as well. And as far as everything that you said that you went through or you have to go through during your pregnancy, I went through. And some of the things, I was kind of leery about, but I guess, now that I'm hearing, that's what you actually have to go through, being disabled and being pregnant, things like that. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations.
This is Chiffon. I have a question. I kind of got on late. My apologies, but have you ever had any concerns as far as, like, with some parents, they're disabled but their children are not, or their children are born with a disability along with the parent? How does one deal about that? You may have discussed that, and I apologize, but that's my question.
That's a great one. No, I didn't go into detail about that. And it actually is a challenge that on a policy level, we've worked with, that you said, with our state early intervention, help me grow programs, because right now, a lot of programs that would help families like that and really aim to be family centered are based on the child's eligibility as having a disability. So with both of my daughters, who are both, my kids that I had through pregnancy, neither of them have disabilities. So my one daughter qualified for Help Me Grow because she was premature. And when they assessed her, she was like 6 days old and she slept through the whole intervention. So we kind of got lucky in a way. But my second daughter, she was also a couple weeks premature, but she didn't test as delayed in any way. So we weren't eligible for early intervention services. So it can really be challenging for a family. And when you think about family-centered approach, it really should be more holistic in, could this service help the whole family, not just reliant on, an assessment of one. And then your second kind of part of that question of if the child has a disability as well, that can, introduce some unique challenges. We've definitely had some of those with Eli at different times when he's had, different medical procedures. He's had walkers at times. He's had like full neck braces, and navigating that when we're in wheelchairs as well can be challenging. But I think that in our family, it more than the challenges, it's helpful that we can also reflect with him what those procedures were like for us. So supporting him in a different way than our parents were able to support us, because we both happen to come from parents that don't have disabilities. So it can definitely complicate it, I think, but nothing that, can't be persevered through like other families of kids with disabilities. But good question.
Yeah,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Kara, yes, you said you have children with disabilities. Sometimes it's the other way around where the child has a disability and you don't. And sometimes I'm like, we take this for granted, but do by any chance your children participate like it? But do you feel that if it was the other way around, it'd be a lot different? Like if the person has a disability and the child doesn't. Hello?
Oh yeah. So you mean if the parent didn't have a disability, do I feel like it would be different?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It's hard for me to imagine because, so much of my identity too is, I guess that would be more like a typical family, led by non-disabled parents. So that's kind of the majority, right? Is parents without disabilities, but there's more parents with disabilities than people realize, somewhere between 10 to 20%. And as we all know, most people who have disabilities don't actually, raise their hands and identify as such. And that's even more the case with parents with disabilities. Many times they're adults. They may not qualify for any services that they need. So there's really no benefit to them to identify as a parent with a disability. So I'm not sure if I got the question. Was that what you were asking?
So by any chance, did any of your kids participate in sports too? Like the Paralympics or anything? So
yeah, so my son participates in Dwarf Athletic Association of America, DAAA. We're big fans of the Paralympics around here. I swam in the 2004 Paralympics, so we're a family that, we're excited about the games.
Do you think that they're probably sending some over to Tokyo now?
Yeah, they're already there actually.
I'm sure they are.
Yes, they are.
That's a good thing. You're gonna watch it on NBC Sports Network?
Yes. I will be. You're like a good promo.
Just saying what happened to that one.
Kiyoki, we need to get on with our panel. And that was our topic last week, was the Paralympics. Okay.
Oh,
cool. All right. Send me the info.
So I'm trying to. Okay.
All right.
I think we have one more question from Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to make some observations. Here in Maryland, we started out, initially it was as a result of my court case. I have a daughter who just turned 18 this weekend, or she turned 18 in October, but she's going off to college this weekend. So I'm very happy about that. And she's excited as well. But as a blind parent, I found myself in a divorce situation, and the laws in Maryland didn't really exist. The judge ultimately, after I was financially completely broke, the judge did give me pretty much the same lousy visitation as most fathers get. But we worked on the law from 2008 through 2014, probably was the last time we worked on really trying to codify parents with disabilities and their rights. But the one thing I would observe is that if you're here in Maryland, it isn't good enough to have a law unless you have a judge who actually read the law. And so a lot of times what we find is that there are lawyers out there who don't read the law and who try and use disability as an attack standard. They say, this parent couldn't possibly be a good parent because they're disabled. And so, I found myself having to bring 8 or 10 witnesses. Fortunately, before I was a parent, I had babysat for a lot of my friends, and because I wanted to make sure I understood all about it, and had really had a lot of blind friends who were raising their kids. So I had this great network of people I could go to. And then when I got in trouble and the judge was trying to decide, can a parent who's blind do a good job? People came in and testified, and he was very impressed. So, parenting is what it is. It's very difficult for all of us to do, but when you add disability into the mix, it really can change your whole perspective on the joy part of it. But as I said, she turned 18 this weekend, went off to the University of Delaware to school. So I'm extremely happy about that.
Congratulations. Yeah, that is awesome. I can't yet imagine what that'll be like, but I imagine like a little one getting on the preschool bus times 10. So.
There you go. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you very much for your presentation.
thank
and
you.
the project and the work that you guys have done over the last 20 years or so in really trying to establish those rights. It helped me to be able to go to the Parents Project and talk to the folks there and find out like what's going on in other states, et cetera. It's unfortunate we can't pass national legislation,
Yeah.
but parenting laws are all state by state. So, you know, you just have to look at every state and see what
Yeah.
are my rights and opportunities.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll
any
pass it
other
to you, Katie.
questions?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing nothing, we will move forward. And Kara, feel free to stay on or to hop off, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, thanks.
So we have a panel of parents from around the state. I've tried to get, diverse experiences so that we can hear from different perspectives about parenting with a disability. So I just have 3 questions. I think I'll start with Kate. Kate, you there? Kate Wallace. Kate, do you want to tell us just like, I guess I have 4 questions. Like, tell us your name and tell us maybe how your disability impacts you, and then or what your disability is, whatever you're comfortable sharing, and then talk about your son.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Kate Wallace. I also work at the Center for Independent Living that serves the Baltimore area Image Center, and I have a 15-month-old son. I actually had him during the early months of the pandemic, so it's sort of like having a newborn, pandemic edition. So that's how I try to put humor in it. I have mental health disabilities that includes depression and anxiety. I've been through treatments for my disabilities, getting therapy and medication management, long even before I got pregnant. I unfortunately had a similar experience with even getting a doctor to continue prescribing my medication while I was pregnant. And that was one of the biggest things I needed to have, was a provider that was willing to continue to prescribe my psychiatric medication. I have been booted off from a caseload from a psychiatric nurse who basically said, absolutely not. We will not serve you if you're going to be pregnant. Okay. I had to go through several primary care physicians, and even went through an obstetrician, who all refused to continue to give me prescriptions. And they kept basically saying it's a liability. We can't do that. And even though the research out there just basically says, you're better off honestly continuing on your medication, and you will have a much smoother and much more successful pregnancy than if you were suddenly told you have to stop taking your medication. So I finally got a new primary care doctor that was like, okay. she was pretty open to continuing to have me take my medication. So I had that. I kind of had my own plans and my own ideas of like peer support, and I had my things set up for like mental health services afterwards if I need it. I even spoke with my counselor to say like, hey, can I still reach out to you even after I have my child? And I was told, yeah, you got all that. So then, like a lot of things that have happened the past year, COVID happened. And everything just kind of went out the window for me. It's sort of like, in all seriousness, I kind of had this plan, and it just felt like someone took all those written plans, shredded it up, and threw it in a fire. It basically turned into not really having peer support anymore. Or if I did have peer support, it was very limited. because it was still during the beginning of the pandemic, and we were still trying to figure out our way. I had my son back in May. He was the only person that was allowed in the hospital was my husband. I could not have anybody else in the hospital, so no relatives, no friends, nothing. So I was in there, and I was in the postpartum ward for a couple days with just my husband. And for my experience, it was, I would honestly say it was a very difficult and trying time. Again, like, I think this is more pandemic related, but even during the summertime when I was on maternity leave, there wasn't a whole lot of support. I had relatives who were immunocompromised. I had friends that were also immunocompromised. So there really wasn't anybody I could physically turn to say, hey, I need advice on this, that, and the other. And for my relatives that were able to come over, it wasn't until about a month, 2 months after I had my son. So it was sort of like, kind of figuring some stuff out. Part of my solution was honestly watching YouTube videos on parenting, going online. I also found some support groups online through Facebook. And I would also say, like, probably what was difficult was also returning to work. So honestly, my hat is off for moms and dads out there who've had to watch their kids while doing a full-time job, because I had to. I had my newborn child and try my best to look into creative options. But even during the beginning of the pandemic, it's hard to find a childcare provider, and you're kind of thinking, like, is this person going to be responsible? Is this person going to be reliable? So for many months, I was kind of balancing working full time and also caring for a newborn that also had some specific needs. He was receiving services through infants and toddlers. So I was kind of having this balanced, I had like a lot of balls in the air. And I just found that for me, I found that by not having like the traditional supports around, initially for me, it was very difficult for me to kind of navigate, because I felt like I was navigating a lot of stuff on my own. It wasn't until a little bit later that I also found out that I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. Part of that was obviously because of the pandemic. Part of it also was, like with many other parents out there, disabled and non, there's this feeling of isolation. So currently, I'm still going through treatment with postpartum depression. I found that you also have to be, not only an advocate for your child, but also a good advocate for yourself. I mean, I'll be honest, especially a few months ago, even when I finally got my son into childcare, I kind of got these looks and I kind of got this attitude from some people going like, well, why are you going to have your kid in childcare? We are still in a pandemic. And I'm like, okay, but I still have to kind of balance out between between working and also being able to make sure that my son is entertained and needs to have what he has. So it involves that. It just involves being creative about your schedule. I mean, it's still a work in progress for me. I would also say to parents with disabilities, don't be afraid to say that, you're struggling. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I am really feeling alone. I'm feeling really isolated, or I'm feeling really lost. That's another feeling, especially with pandemic stuff. So I've been lately trying to help parents, especially new parents who are pregnant and are about to have their child soon, because we're still in a pandemic. We're still going through a lot of unknown factors that, these struggles are real. Everything's a work in progress. And you have to be able to advocate for yourself. You have to be able to say to friends, relatives, coworkers, at the end of the day, everybody can be part of your supports. And sometimes you have to call people out and say, hey, I need support. I need help. And, kind of go at it. So hopefully with my story, I hope that guy helps some other parents out there, especially during the pandemic. So that's why I kind of humorously, but not humorously, try to say like, this is like the pandemic edition of having a kid. But in all seriousness,
The struggle is real, Kate.
Yeah, I mean.
So thank you so much for sharing. I think you, and I didn't have as little of a one during the pandemic, but you're right. I mean, it still is a very difficult time to parent. You actually answered pretty much all of the questions I had in your answer to the first question. So I'd like to move on to Shannon Minnick. Can you briefly tell us?
I have a question for Kate.
We're not taking questions right now. Okay.
All right, Megan. Hey.
Okay. Yeah. So Shannon, can you tell us a little bit about either what your disability is, how it impacts you, and about your kids or kid? I don't even know how many you have. Do you have one or more?
Thanks, Katie. So my name is Shannon Minnick. I work for Independence Now. We're located in Silver Spring. We serve Prince George's and Montgomery County. I have 2 kids. I'm a quadriplegic, so I'm paralyzed from the chest down, C6, C7 level. I guess I have a piece of both worlds. I had my first daughter before my injury, and my second daughter 7 years after my injury. So the difference between the 2 pregnancies, I would say there really wasn't a big difference in the caring of my 2 girls. I was sick through both pregnancies. I guess it's a gene that my mother passed down to me, but I was pretty much, sick through both pregnancies. But the one thing I can say is I always knew I can have kids before my injury. After my injury, the first thing I said, because the plan was to have 10 kids, I don't know why, but that was the plan. But after I had my injury, I was told that I would no longer have kids. So, it hurt, but, I take it and I keep it moving. But 7 years later, here I am pregnant. So I didn't know I was pregnant because the symptoms were different. And so when I found out I was pregnant, all of my doctors were male doctors. I don't know what it was back in 1997 that, still all your doctors were males. So all my doctors were male doctors, and all of them said, we don't think it's a good idea that you have this kid. So I told my kid's father, please do not tell anyone that I'm pregnant, because the decision wasn't made yet if this was going to happen. So once my daughter found out it was a wrap, I was going to have to do whatever I had to do to, have another kid. And so for me, it was the stares, it was the questions, of how did you have a baby? First of all, how did it happen? It happens the same way it happens for everyone else. It's the same thing. So that was a big question. Another question was, how did I take care of her? How did I deliver? The delivery was actually easier than the first one because she came pretty quickly. So that was my first daughter. I was there 24 hours talking about, when is this going to happen? It shouldn't be this long. But Erica, as she still is now, she gets things done quickly. So that wasn't a big deal. Being a parent, I think, is the most important thing that I've ever done in my life. Because you have these people that are dependent on you for every single thing, like everything, to eat, I would say to breathe, because I have to make sure the air is clean. I can't have people smoking cigarettes around my babies. So every part of their life, they depended on me, if I had a disability or not. So when I became, a different mother, because I think I took care of Erica differently than what I took care of Ikea. Ikea, she just did whatever she wanted to do, and I just chased behind her. Erica, I had to hold her closer to me. So our bond, even today, is a little bit different because she was always here. My challenges with my disability and being a mother were, for me, I was afraid that I was going to hurt her because she was so little. So I was afraid that I was going to hurt her. But once you get home and you have to get there, I'm a doer. So when there's something has to be done, I'm just going to do it. I'm not waiting for the next person to come. So I started changing diapers with my teeth. I started putting clothes on with my teeth, picking her up with my teeth. And my youngest daughter would be like, what is she doing? And so, then sometimes she would come swoop in, this little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, kind of helping me get her adjusted or whatever. But it was the greatest experience of my life. It's why I am today. Is because I had to take care of these babies and they depended on me, and I depended on them. They empowered me to move forward, to keep dreaming, to keep doing what I had to do. I don't think I would have went back to school if not for my girls, because, me going back to school was a challenge, and I knew I had to go back to school, because how do I tell them to go to school if I'm not doing it? If I didn't get a degree in something, I didn't know what it would be, but I knew I had to go back to school. And, I took the bus to school every day with that kid tied to my chest. I dropped her off at daycare, and I'm going to tell you, I was the only student in that school that came and fed their child lunch. Everyone else kept lollygagging, doing what they was doing, but I was there changing her diaper. I was there feeding her. And they would always say, Miss Minnick, you don't have to come back and change your diaper. And I was like, this is my baby. If I want to be here to make sure she's getting what she needs, and she needs her mama. And so I did. And, I speak to people today. There's a young lady, her name is Danny. And if you look up Danny's Twins film, I'm in that film, pieces of that film, where we're talking about her first experience meeting someone that looked exactly like her, that's a mom. Peer mentoring is the most powerful thing that any of us could do as people with disabilities, because we've been there, done that, and we're educating people on how they can get through this. Her first question to me was, do you have any kids? And I told her, yes, I have 2, one before, one after. And she has twins now. She's a quadriplegic, same level as me, with twins. And she did all of the things that Cara was talking about. She did more of the planning. She knew she wanted to have kids, so she started planning what that would look like. And she's great. Her babies are about 6-7 months old now, and they're twins. So imagine two kids at the same time, having the same exact needs at the same time. So it can be done. And I would say, if there's anybody that is looking to become a mom or a dad and need information and resources. The internet is full of information and resources.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank God mine's are grown though.
Well, and
have a question
I
also.
love
I
that.
tell people that I survived 2 teenage daughters, so I can survive anything.
Yeah, and I imagine it was probably a different experience from one to the other in so many ways. I know, like when I brought my daughter home, even though I had a son, I still felt like I was going to break her, you know? So even with your second, I think, you know, we still have those kinds of fears and then have to do it all different. Like you had to do it in a different way this time. I can't imagine that.
It's just, you know, it's just, so here we are, me and you, Katie, perfect example. 2 women having 2 kids, they still need the same thing, right? And we both still have to provide that same care. I just do it a little differently than you.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to move on to Bong because Bong, I remember talking to him one time about, you know, changing diapers and how he did that. Bong, do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, your son and maybe how your disability impacted you or impacts you with parenting and how you've kind of made it work?
Yeah, sure. Again, my name is Bong Rosario. I actually work for the Maryland Department of Disabilities. I've had my disability my whole entire life. I was born with it. I have a soon-to-be 23-year-old son. He'll actually be 23 September the 11th. So it's very close. So having my son, so when he was born, you know, obviously it was great, but there was a lot of questions that just ran across in my head, not even from outside people, but just from myself, because I can't use my hands, I can't grip, you know, and then I have limitations with the length of my arms, like I can't stretch my arms out 100%. And quite honestly, if I'd have known what I just found out about what Shannon did, I probably would have talked to Shannon back then if I'd have known her instead of watching the National Geographic channel 24/7. So it's funny when I say it, but I watched a lot of National Geographic. I watched a lot of tigers and lions pick up their cubs with their mouth and just carry them all over the place. Because 80% of what I do is with my mouth. Basically, the only things that I do with my hands is drive my wheelchair and drive my car when I'm driving a car. But everything else is basically with my mouth. So after watching that, I learned how to adapt my surroundings and my son to be able to pick him up without hurting him. You know, so when he was an infant, I would be able to pick him up and hold my arms together and just lay him on top of my arms so I could cradle him. As he got older and was able to stand up and kind of lean up against me, I was able to buckle my seatbelt because, and I don't recommend this, but I don't never wear a seatbelt in my chair, but I was able to buckle my seatbelt, bend over, you know, and grab his collar, his shirt collar with my neck and pick him up and straddle him behind me. I would loosen up my seatbelt a little bit and straddle him behind me so he could sit behind me and I could take him wherever I needed to go. So, and then like Katie said, I told her that I wiped, you know, and changed his diapers with my mouth. And I think for the most part, that was more adaptation on me, opposed to watching anything else. You know, because with cubs and stuff, they just lick them. Yeah, well, there was no way I was just going to do that. So I took baby wipes, and I would hold his legs up with one of my arms, you know, and then take the baby wipes and strategically wipe from the back up to the front, you know, and then fold it and toss it in the, trash, and then roll the diaper up and toss it in the diaper genie. I've been peed on a couple of times by him. So it was not fun. It
You
was
don't
an
have to say that,
experience.
Vaughn. It's okay.
It was an experience. I don't think I would trade it in for anything in the world. And I think having him taught me more than anything, I think how to adapt to my surroundings, no matter what the surroundings were, because it didn't matter where we were. I still had to be a father. I still had to do things for him. So it really taught me how to adapt to my environment. I think one of the biggest support systems outside of my mother was, as my son was growing up, especially a toddler, was the National Geographic Channel, because I did learn a lot from that. And at the time, his mother was pretty supportive too. And before he was even born, we had a discussion about, what I would be able to do and so forth. And I told her flat out, I don't know what I'll be able to do. I won't know until this actually happens, but I can tell you that you won't be doing it by yourself. Either way, regardless, that even if I have to spend money to get somebody to do it for me, you won't be doing it by yourself. So that was a discussion that we had. And like in Kara's presentation, I did do a genetics test. I knew he wasn't going to, get my disability or whatever, but I just did it just for everyone else's sanity, and security. Maybe sanity wasn't a good word, security. But I think that was probably, like I said, outside of Discovery or National Geographic, I think my mother was the biggest supporter. And like Shannon said, having a child, it kind of pushes you and forces you to become an adult. And regardless of your disability, you have to do things the way you have to do them.
Thank you, Vaughn. Now we are now out of time. But if Mike, if you want to talk a little bit about being a parent and people want to stay on, but before we do, I just want to give the opportunity for anyone to make any community announcements in case people need to hop off.
Really quick, this Thursday, Independence Now's next housing seminar is for anybody who's paying rent in the state of Maryland. We are doing a seminar on the Maryland State Renters Tax Credit. It is available to renters who meet certain income requirements. And I will drop the link to that housing seminar into the chat in just a moment. But there is an application, you fill out the form, and some people will be eligible to get some of the money back that they paid in rent. So if you're a renter, you probably let your consumers know that you're hosting this, and I'm going to walk everybody through how to do that application.
Great. Other announcements? Okay, Mike, you're up. I'm not going to give you questions because you guys just intuitively answer everything that I had. So.
Well, this is one of the best panels I've heard in a long time. I love you guys' stories. They inspire me to hear how other people fight and work with their disability to make things happen. I guess for me, the decision, I was lucky I was able to take a year and a half or so off after my daughter was born and spend a lot of bonding time with her. And my goal was to do everything that needed to be done, that I couldn't. I've never wanted to be the guy who copped out, but I certainly wasn't with this child going to be the one who said, oh, I can't do that because I can't see. And I had seen a lot of what I thought of as sort of failed parents prior to my having my daughter Juliana. I had seen a lot of people who raised their kids and then their kids became their servants and they taught their kids to do everything for them. And I saw that just lead to real problems. And so I really wanted to make sure that my daughter understood that her daddy was and her mama were both competent and capable, and that that she had the right to expect what she could, what she needed to have her needs met for both of us. I don't need to say anything more except go learn from other parents who have already done this. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. I can't tell you how many people we get calls here at the Image Center because we engineer devices, and we get calls from people saying, I need a crib for my baby. I need to have a modified crib so that I can get the baby in and out by using my wheelchair, or I have very short arms. And so we figure out solutions, but mostly these are solutions to people who've already been parenting for a while. In other words, these are things that they should have been thinking about ahead of time, but usually the non-disabled parent, and very often that is the situation, the non-disabled parent says, oh no, I'll take care of that. You don't need to worry about that. Well, and then you realize after a while, yeah, you do. You do need to worry about it. You do need to be able to take care of that child in every way that is possible. And sometimes the solutions elude you. And so you really have to talk to a lot of people and find out if people similar with your similar disability, and find out how have they solved this problem. And sometimes you have to solve it yourself, which means just saying, okay, there's nobody around. This is a matter of absolute importance. I must get it done. I have to figure out a way, and you figure out a way, and if it's watching those National Geographic channels, then more power to you, Bong. That was perfect. That's it for me. Thank you all very much for this presentation. It was just phenomenal to hear your stories.
Mike,
Yeah.
this is Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
There is a group of men and women that most people don't consider. They're called default disability. They're caused by the United States military. We got a ton of them that were created in Afghanistan. A lot of them are coming home. Vaughn, the things that you said, you sound like an ex-GI. You to adapt.
I think people get when you have to do the fight with disability, you do start sounding like a GI sometimes, because you know what, it's like that. It's a fight, and we're gonna win it.
Yeah, and so my concern is a lot of times a father or a mother leave home, they're normal. And war is something that changes your world instantaneously. And so I work with a bunch of wounded warriors. And the things that these men and women are able to do, I mean, I've got a young lady that lost both arms and both legs in Afghanistan, but she's a mother, and the things that she's able to do defies belief. I've got a young man that lost both legs and an arm. He has 3 children, and I think the biggest issue was one of the sons was old enough to remember when dad could walk and run, throw him on his shoulder and go everywhere. And now dad's in a wheelchair. So I think the son has adjusted to it. Dad is still having issues with, trying to adjust to the fact that he has no legs now, but it is amazing the things that parents with disabilities can do. Now, I'm a parent with a disability. I have 3 sons ranging in age from 43 to 28. The 2 older boys remember me when I was mean, lean, fighting machine. The youngest one, he's never seen me walk, and he's 28 years old, and so he's kind of envious of the 2 older boys that had a dad that had legs that worked and did this, that, and the other. So my head is off. Bong, you absolutely, you've blown me away with the things that you were saying there. But at the end of the day, it's nothing funny about what you said. You were a father, you are a father who showed up. And you can't, even with your disability, you were able to be the father. And my hat is off to you for that. That's something
Thank you.
I know about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So hang in there.
All right. Well, we are so out of time. We are above time.
See you next
So
week.
Everyone have a great day. What is our, Mike, what is our session for next week? Or Heather, Sarah, do you have anything?
I don't know. We've been working on September, so we must have thought we were done with August, maybe, but are we? If there is a show, we'll let you know, folks. Thank you very much for attending today, and my apology, but I'm not sure. We may have open discussion next week, but we'll see what comes up.
All right, so maybe join us Monday. Check your emails. All right, take care, everyone.